so that we will be able to share this evening's discussion with those who are not here. Again, this is the Wharf District Council's July 20th meeting. And we have a full agenda. Again, like to start this off by welcoming Boston mayoral candidate, Councilor Michelle Wu. And we have asked her to tell us a little bit about her thoughts about the future of Boston, but also to address a number of the things that are of greatest concern specifically to the members of the Wharf District Council. And I know that Councilor, you got those questions. So take it away. We're delighted to have you again as a part of our group.
Yes, thank you. And I'll just note, I am at an in-person event for an hour and a half, 2 hours, but and so I'm in the car to be in our conversation. Then I will go back. We are not driving, which is why I'm not wearing the seatbelt. So don't worry, I'm not acting recklessly. I'm really, really excited to be before you all talking about the future of our city and the important decision points and frankly, trade-offs that we have to talk about in this moment. I'm one of historic, incredible candidate fields running for mayor of Boston. And what I bring to this race is a deep understanding of city government, having served for the longest time in City Hall out of the field. I've been a decade, first working for Mayor Menino, and then now 8 years on the Boston City Council representing all of our city at large. The issues that I have most specifically focused on, in fact, are issues that this community has been advocating for and is now grappling with very intensely, whether it is the intersection of development decisions and planning and our climate future and transportation and affordability, or how we connect our national draw as a tourist city with the need to plan for neighborhoods and residences and residents in these busiest areas and how we can make all of that work. And so I know there are a number of specific topics that we'll get into, but I just wanted to note that this is a consequential moment for Boston and for the country. It is even more so for this election cycle because the next mayor will take over, not in January as is the custom, but days after the election in November, because we're in an unusual situation without a duly elected mayor. And so there will need to be a quick transition. And this is what it makes conversations like this all the more important, to have the relationships and communication and plans already laid. My focus in becoming a Boston's potentially first mom with kids in the school system, sitting in that seat and living in a multi-generational home, being a daughter of immigrants and caregiver of a mother with mental illness, is to dismantle so many of the barriers that our families face through action on the city level and ensuring that we are redefining what's possible for cities all across the country when it comes to climate leadership, housing and transportation that truly connect to our long-term needs, and the ability for everyone in Boston to live in a world-class city and access that opportunity while also being in a community that is welcoming, thriving, and connected at the scale of our neighborhoods and organizations such as this one. So thank you so much for having me.
Great. We're going to open it up for questions after we, if you don't mind, ask you to address some of the things that we're most interested in. There were 8 things that we talked about as being of particular concern to the members of the Wharf District. Are you familiar with the difficulties that we have with traffic and traffic congestion and concerns that we have about the State Street project and how those things intersect?
Yes, and I'm grateful to have had the chance to meet over Zoom at that point as well with a group of leaders who have not just been expressing concerns, but as is so often in the case, residents who take it upon yourselves in your volunteer time to go even further and present alternatives and plans. And so, you know, I think one critique that I have had of our system as a whole. I think it's especially visible and salient when it comes to how we make decisions around development and transportation, but really could be applied broadly, is that we tend to be more reactive and myopic, as opposed to having a plan that actually encompasses the scale and the comprehensiveness that will make everything fit together. And so what I appreciated about the plan from the residents is that you're looking at not just one particular street and having a window into how to maybe jam different things in and try to make it work on paper, but really the flow of the entire grid and how from different points and respecting different major sites and traffic flows that you all are very familiar with because you live there and experience it every day, that we should be taking more of that macro view. And so that is the goal of how I would approach planning, both when it comes to development in particular, but how transportation underlies that. And so, of course, right, nothing I heard from the group of leaders that I met with was protesting, increasing transportation access or supporting cycling access and safety. It's here and in other places around the city important that we can fit that into a larger conversation about how the whole district flows together.
Great. Well, I hope we can find a way to do that, because it's certainly a complicated issue. You know that we are very interested in the topic of climate resilience, and that we have our task force has kicked off. We just found out that the state budget does include funding for the first part of our engineering study. Representative Mikowitz put $250,000 in there for the first part of our study. This is the first time we've had a chance to share that information with all of the members on this Zoom call, so we're very happy about that. But you obviously appreciate the importance of climate, of dealing with the issue of climate resilience. Tell us a little bit, if you will, about your thoughts about how we can go about that in a successful way.
Yeah, the topic is both, of course, very, very broad and national and global in scope, but at the same time, extremely tangible to the city of Boston and to each one of our families. Right, I share sometimes that my older son was born in my first year on the council, December birthday, and that was the first year that we started to see these headlines about how this was now the hottest year ever on record. In December of that year, there had been all sorts of strange, intense weather events, and it was jarring and scary to think that, I was bringing a baby into the world at the time when we were breaking these records. When he turned 1, same headline. Now we've surpassed that record, and now he's 6 years old. 6 hottest years ever on record on our planet, right? That is the type of urgency that drives me. I was very grateful to take the leap from thinking about city government as a place where you could maybe tweak around the edges on this issue, to being part of a Green Ribbon Commission study tour to Northern Europe, where we went into cities that resemble Boston in many ways: historic, dense, not planned just on street grids, very many uses all tied together. And in many other cities, we are seeing the kind of coordinated action, holistic approach, and far-reaching planning that Boston should adopt. Of course, financing is an issue, but when we frame it as comparing the cost of doing nothing or what the eventual cost would be to try to repair all and mitigate all the harms, now is the moment to make those investments. There will be federal funding coming down that the city of Boston should be ready to deploy. We also need to ensure that we are starting to assemble the funding streams, whether it is through a shift in how we think about the water and sewer financing, or a stormwater fee, or charging not for water usage, but for permeable surface area to incentivize development that actually does its share to absorb water and mitigate flooding. There are many ways that we at the city level could lean into the power to start assembling the financing, as well as doing the long-term planning for what a seawall or major scale of protection would look like, as well as integrating it across the board, because we're currently still relying on a voluntary resiliency checklist that is administered by the BPDA, right? And they do their best, but it's a one-off negotiation and conversation with each individual project, as opposed to reaching for net zero and carbon, no emissions, so that we can really be ahead of the curve.
Great. Well, if you're successful, we look forward to working with you on this topic, because it is our front yard or backyard, depending upon how you think of it. One of the questions that we had was this whole issue of bringing employment back to Boston, and the hospitality industry in particular has been devastated. A number of industries really have been hurt badly, and a number of businesses have folded as a result. And yet there's this huge labor shortage that we all hear about. What role can the city play in trying to bring these private industries back into the economic firmament that's so important to us?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of pieces here. One is really leaning in with the recovery funds that we have, and the ability for cities to affect how people feel about coming back in person, whether it's as an employee, as a resident, as a visitor or enjoyer of events around the city, to really support our small businesses and arts and culture organizations in what they need to be anchors, again, of drawing industry and drawing foot traffic back. Boston, as with the densest cities across the country, saw an exodus of workers and population, especially in certain industries that are now able to continue working remotely and connecting through Zoom. And we are going to have a different value proposition for a very fluid flow of capital and people and business now, with the sort of traditional bonds between where you live and you work very much disrupted. It is actually an opportunity for the city of Boston if we are proactive about our leadership. Right, it's a little bit terrifying, I will be honest, as I've been hearing from every single large employer that they're not coming back downtown until at least September, and even then it's at 40% capacity, and they'll see how much office space they need. But if we really lean into this to convene the conversations ahead of time, rather than waiting for potentially disastrous impacts in the commercial real estate market downtown, we can work on changes that were needed all along. Could we get childcare on site at each of these large commercial offices, so that it does give workers and employees one more mechanism of support when they do come in person? Can we think about partnerships or conversations about maybe not Class A office space, but Class B or Class C office space, to expedite any potential conversion to residential units, and just address some of our housing crisis and boost housing supply as well? Could we partner with, as New York did when there was a glut of office space, when different banks were merging and all of a sudden there was a lot of space in empty towers, to make that available at low cost or subsidized rent to arts organizations for administrative space, to ease some of the costs and to help them recovery in this moment? It will be even more important for Boston to emphasize the sort of bones of our city, that we are a walkable, community-driven, arts and culture-rich, tourism attractive city, where there are so many things that you can't miss out on experiencing except in person. And that's the message we need to sell, both around the community here, but also nationally, to draw folks back and boost our economy.
Great. You know that we have this dilemma, as I would call it, with the issue of the municipal harbor plan, and the question about development and open space and preserving the historic character, while also making it inclusive and address a lot of really different opinions about how this should all play out. Can you give us some thoughts as to how we can resolve our differences of opinion and move forward in some fashion?
Yeah, it is a really unfortunate situation that um, that sort of all the stakeholders are in at this moment, where we see the results when our process is complicated, overly burdensome, and political, to be quite candid, when our zoning code is outdated and everything needs to be negotiated one by one by one. And sometimes projects are in the pipeline for 2, 5, 10 years, right? Situations have changed. And we can't, at this point, given our climate vulnerability, given the situation we're in economically, we can't just say, well, because this was started so long ago and because we should just ignore the situations have changed. We have to be prioritizing what is in the best interest of Boston's immediate recovery and long-term resiliency and sustainability. I do not believe that the proposal currently on the table, as long as the proponents have already been at it, unfortunately, I do not believe that this represents the best interests of all the different groups and issues that are at play here. And so the court decision reflected that there were serious concerns. It was not just a technical administrative decision. And so this should be, again, painfully and unfortunately so, and one more example of how we need to change that system, but take this opportunity to get it right.
Thanks. There's a question about housing, and I don't think that this necessarily relates directly to the Wharf district per se. Obviously, we're one of the more expensive places to live, but that having been said, all of us are concerned about affordable housing and the lack thereof. How can the city help advance the development of affordable housing?
Yeah, so
broad definition to what that is.
Yeah, and honestly, an important starting point is to know the true reality of where we stand relative to the situations of each neighborhood and each micro neighborhood, to measure affordability in even more specific terms to Boston and to our communities, because we are currently often inflating the sense of how successful we have been at adding affordability into the system. So one is that we need to boost the supply of housing. That is, Boston has been in some ways overproducing our share relative to the region, and we need partnerships and we need leadership that will drive that regionally, but we need to continue to do our part locally. There are immediate low-hanging fruit in many places in terms of expediting zoning for 100% affordable projects, or thinking about density in places that make sense near transit with an overlay for affordability and climate resiliency, or ADUs or accessory dwelling units that are often already being used as housing, but to make sure these are up to code and safe and legalized as part of an immediate boost of supply here and there. And then in terms of truly pushing for creation of new affordable housing developments, workforce housing developments, the city of Boston should be putting a little bit more skin in the game from city resources as well. I'm the only candidate who has said, of our federal relief funding that is available, once in a generation opportunity, we should not be distributing it to 100 different places with little bits and pilots here and there, but to dedicate a huge part of that to make housing the foundation of our recovery through boosting home ownership, through building affordable housing and integrating the redevelopment of city-owned buildings to include affordable housing, and to pilot new initiatives such as a municipal home ownership voucher, so that we're always trying to build equity in our residents and not just sort of continue a cycle of rents becoming more and more unaffordable. And then when it comes to the private sector, having conversations about what makes sense now. I support boosting what is required in terms of the inclusionary development policy and contributing more to on-site affordable units. I hear from developers constantly, I know, 50% of zero is zero. So the goal is to produce more units, not necessarily to have the highest percentage, and we have to strike that right balance. But currently we are missing out on the potential for development to reasonably be closing some gaps in our city that are very urgent. And so having a strong focus there and ensuring that we are pulling every lever we can to really center municipal power to make a difference on this issue.
Great, thank you. I want to leave some time for questions. I'll shorten these by just asking one last thing. How do you feel about the future of the current plans for the Northern Avenue Bridge?
So I have joined advocates in really believing that there's an opportunity to make sure that we are putting our resources in a way to center what is the future of transportation. You know, I know there are concerns around traffic patterns and this and that, and that I feel I was more supportive of the advocates' plans to ensure that there was a focus on pedestrian walkway and active transportation infrastructure, a historic, beautiful structure, and a concern that starting with first shuttle / bus / vehicle lane quickly will change that experience for residents, and also you know, just that we're missing out a little bit in terms of the potential there. But you know, larger infrastructure projects should be the purview of a planning department that we will create should I be so lucky as to be elected mayor, and those processes will go a little bit differently in the future and include a much more comprehensive view.
So do you think there will be a Northern Avenue Bridge, or do you know?
Oh,
Definitely.
I have not been following the latest iterations of everything, but this is a project that has probably been in the pipeline for most of my council career, so we will make sure that it moves forward. Great.
I'd like to ask others who have questions to raise their hands for the candidate, so that it's not just me asking questions. There are some others that would like to try to get some response. Suzanne, I know you had a, Joanne, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle, for taking time to be with us tonight. Just to build on a little bit about what Mark's first comment about traffic, there is a new bus-only lane by the North End and Valenti Way and Beverly Street, right in that area, heading towards the Washington Avenue and the bridge, you know. And all of a sudden you're driving, and what was 2 vehicle lanes becomes 1 vehicle lane and one big wide red, painted red, which says buses only. And of course it's empty. And that's the kind of thing like State Street that I think everybody who lives in the downtown environment or drives in it, you just shake your head and think, what are they thinking? Yes, we want the buses to go through easier and faster, but unless there is a bus, at least maybe, I don't know, every 10 minutes, which I don't think there is at all, what is the logic behind that?
It's quite complicated because you know, with this project also, I remember it kicked off earlier on in my tenure, and many conversations in small groups and large groups about not only what the eventual vision would be, which is beautiful with the fishbone structure and how that will look, you know, relative to the sort of aesthetic of the harbor, but the very complex situation of how the lanes would be rearranged to accommodate traffic as it was being constructed. And so I've probably been over there in the last couple of weeks or so, but didn't notice the specific bus lane or where we had to split off to go by. But I will check it out next time I am around. You know, we are trying to plan for the traffic patterns of the future and that we're hoping for. Unfortunately, we're just in a very complex moment of uncertainty of what public transportation ridership will look like, how many people will be coming back downtown. And I think one philosophy that I tend to subscribe to, you know, one of tactical urbanism, as it's called, is that when you can create structures that are flexible to accommodate, you know, test things out and see if something's not working, to be able to then shift and accommodate other uses. That's generally the approach that I think we're seeing more and more from in the Boston Transportation Department as well. But I will certainly take that feedback and go back and reconcile that to see what the bus schedules are or what the eventual ramp up looks like once we're coming out of the summer.
Thanks. Suzanne, you
I-
had a question. Go ahead.
Well, hello, Michelle.
Hi,
Thank you
Gus.
for joining us. I have a question regarding a concern that City Hall doesn't listen to the neighborhoods. That when specific neighborhood issues come out, that there's not a focus on the neighborhood's concerns. And we have a number of issues here. And I guess we would like a commitment that the mayor would be responsive to us, not just sort of pay lip service. And specifically issues like the State Street traffic lane concern, that here we have very specific issues and needs. And yes, I understand the city as a whole, but there's also a community need that cannot be ignored, that should not be ignored. And we feel frustrated in many instances because we feel like City Hall, so to speak, is not listening to us. They're paying lip service. So, and just another one is preserving the historic nature of the Wharf District community. It is such a beautiful area in terms of history meeting today. And as you know, many movies are filmed here because of such historic streets and buildings. And again, we don't see a commitment by the city to protect this neighborhood specifically. And I just would like you to respond to helping us and
Sure.
I guess the other neighborhoods.
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. And, you know, I'm struggling in some ways to find effective words because in a mayoral campaign, basically everything that I say, you know, I feel like is in some ways reminiscent of the interaction with developers of, you know, when you enter into the process that there might be, a project that's proposed to be this high when they actually only want this high because it will settle in the middle. So we're kind of in a give and take of a mayoral race. And so I hope you will accept what I'm saying as truly my intention and not just sort of what a candidate has to say in this moment. But I'm going to also try to reference my track record. So hopefully it'll back it up a little bit more. I am someone who never expected to be in politics, had no interest, and still sort of as a human being does not sort of derive any sense of self-satisfaction from many of the aspects of being in photos and things like that. For me, this is about rolling up my sleeves and trying to make a difference every day for our residents. That's why I was never interested in any other level of government except for the city level, because this is where you can really get down to the details of how to make things work and how the issues that, you know, we sometimes see in the news, which are sweeping and big picture, are important for the city to lead on. And Boston has a potential to do so, potentially more than any other city, but they must be grounded in a responsiveness and sort of getting the mechanics right of city services and quality of life and making sure our residents have safe, healthy, vibrant communities as a foundation for everything else. So that is my approach. I will just say I will commit, of course, to upholding that as mayor. And it's, you know, my track record is one where I have spent the first 7-8 months of my first city council term immersed in water and sewer infrastructure, trying to help one alley in the South End figure out an ownership issue because water and sewer was claiming that it was 2/3 private and 1/3 public, and therefore they wouldn't fix it. And we went through the whole betterment policy and memos, and I got that fixed. And so that's the kind of thing that gets me really excited about this job, in addition to the big picture. But in moving into the role of mayor, this is more than any individual can do. You know, no single elected official can really be responsive at the scale of every single one of our neighborhoods. And I'm not talking about 22 neighborhoods, but 46 plus neighborhoods at the scale of the Wharf District and Bay Village and Orient Heights versus Jeffries Point. It is about the team that goes into City Hall and the philosophy that staff and team members will carry, which is that we have to get it right for residents in order to be able to do the big picture and to earn the trust to be able to drive change at that larger level. And I'm sorry, Mark, I'm part of another candidate forum.
I understand. I was just going to say thank you very much for joining us, for answering our questions. We wish you great luck with your candidacy, and you've been very good to share your time with us. We do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your leadership and advocacy. It's 8 weeks to the day until Election Day on September 14th. So very respectfully ask for your vote, and look forward to being back and engaging often.
Great. Thank you. Best of luck.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. So that's great. We are going to switch gears and have Officer Ciampa, I think. Suzanne, yes. Give us an update, please, on how you've been doing taking care of us lately.
Thanks, Mark. So yeah, I'll be in for Sergeant Moy today. If any of you haven't heard, he's taken on a second role as of now due to understaffing at the department. So he's just kind of helping out with the detectives as of now. So he does have his hands full. So I'll just be stepping in. So in the district, really a major crime over the past month and a half, because I don't believe we met last month. It's been street robberies at night, violent street robberies with like assaults, aggravated assaults, and they all result in the stealing of cell phones or money or wallets or personal stuff of value. We've had 7 of them in the past maybe month and a half, 5-6 weeks or so. They're all around the Faneuil Hall area. They're late at night. Basically, what we want to do there is throw out some extra patrol, take a holistic approach, and really try to hit it from a few different angles. So we are very aware of it, and we'll be continuing to try to fix what's going on. Basically, I'll give you a few quick incidents. Like I said, there were 7 of them, but on 6/20 of 21, the victim stated that between the hours of 1 and 2, like I said, early in the morning, after leaving, it's usually somebody that may have had a couple of drinks they're targeting, it seems like. After visiting an underground nightclub, this victim was attacked by 3 or 4 unknown individuals. The victim basically stated that he was waiting for an Uber ride, engaging in casual conversation with the suspects until they turned on him, started punching him, and they stole his house keys, his wallet, and his cell phone. Secondly, another robbery happened at 3 a.m. on 7/8/21. The officers responded to a call for a robbery in progress in the area of Chatham Street and Commercial Street. So this is a little bit off the Faneuil Hall area, but it is happening in the Wharf area. This victim stated that 3 individuals, basically same thing, stopped him, talked to him, assaulted him. The victim also had his cell phone and wallet stolen. Officers observed that the victim had red swelling on the left side of his face, but no other incidents. So it looks like they just punched him a few times. In this incident, the victim was a little uncooperative with the officers. So this investigation may not be as sharp as others, but it is happening out there. Lastly, we do have our area drug unit monitoring this also. On Saturday, July 17th, at about the hours of 2:15 a.m., our drug unit officers were kind of staking out the area, trying to put a stop to this. And they observed an individual holding a woman's purse, and it seemed as though he was trying to conceal it. And this individual has been stopped by officers multiple times over the past couple of months, so they're pretty familiar with him. This is in the Faneuil Hall area, and it just seemed as though this individual was trying to conceal this item and another item, and kept going. towards his waistband. And as the officers really started looking at him, this individual started walking away fast, looking over his shoulder, trying not to be seen. Eventually, the officers did stop this individual after he had circled the block quite a few times. And the story that this individual gave was that he was with this girl who he recently met, a newer girlfriend, I believe he stated. And this purse belonged to her, and she was frustrated, so she threw the purse in the air. And then two other individuals picked the purse up, ran down the street with it, and this individual chased them down the street. It's a very interesting story. I'm not sure I believe it. He stated that they took all the stuff out of the purse and left the purse, and that's why he had a purse with nothing in it. I'm not sure I believe it. I'm not sure the officers believed it, but they did what's called an FIO, field interrogation, and detectives will further investigate. So I don't want to read too much into it, but it's all the same type of stuff. They're just going after phones and wallets and cash and stuff like that. So
And these are all way late at night, right? Early.
They're all way late at night. Yes, they seem to be after midnight up until 3, 4 in the morning. Most of them are, maybe they're targeting some individuals that are intoxicated. Just an easier target, I'm sure. But like I said, we're very well aware of it, and that's kind of our main concern in the Wharf area.
Do you think it's the same people that are doing all this?
So the reports that I've read, mainly the same descriptions, but not all. So I'm sure out of the 7, maybe half could be based on description, and the others could be random. I mean, we do have fights in those bar areas all the time anyway, or random robberies, but I would have to follow up with detectives to determine that. I know they've done some, like I said, FIOs and stuff. So they'll see if some of these individuals may match up, if they can get some surveillance and look a little further into it. But we are on it. Secondly, we did have a suicide on district at the Independence Wharf at 470 Atlantic. I don't know if any of you guys are aware of that, but somebody did jump off of that building. That was back in June 23rd, and he was non-viable. That was kind of a big scene. I just did want to mention that. Also on district, just a couple of domestic incidents that I'll go through. Also late at night, 2:47 a.m. Saturday, June 26th of 21. Officers received a call for a fight at Surface and State. A male and a female, they were fighting outside, screaming. Officers observed an intoxicated female running in the middle of Surface Road down by the Kennedy Greenway. And eventually they were able to stop her. And the female, she stated that, she just was in a verbal altercation with her boyfriend. And this female was extremely belligerent, and she began to run away from the officers. They had to stop her, talk to her, get her side of the story, complete side of the story. Officers also spoke with the male who ended up being the victim in this case, and he had bruising and red marks all over his arm. And he stated that his female was intoxicated. She called to have him for him to pick her up in the middle of the night. She was uncooperative. He couldn't find her after some time. And eventually when he did find her, she was, belligerent and violent. And the two did have a past of domestic violence and civil restraining orders and such. But long story short, the female was arrested for a domestic incident. But not all domestic incidents involve the drinking. We had another one on district, which was kind of awkward. These two seem to have worked together. This occurred Friday, July 16th at 7 p.m. They work over the Liberty Square area, and this female called 911, basically stated that a co-worker that she had dated on and off for a short period of time He had texted her 27 times, called her many, many times. And when she got up to use the bathroom, she went back, finished her water, and she stated that she started feeling funny. So she called 911 and she thought he had roofied her. Eventually she had left the work area. And this individual followed her, ended up pushing her to the ground. That's when officers arrived. And it was to be made note that, you know, when the officers did care for this victim, this individual was still calling her as the officers arrived on scene. So she was treated by EMS and, you know, informed of her 209A rights and such.
Officer, I think we get the, I think we get the pattern.
Yeah.
And we appreciate the fact that all these things that happen, are happening in ways without our having to take care of them because you do. And thank goodness
thank
for
you.
that.
Thanks.
We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing all that with us. And anybody else have any questions for Officer Ciampa? And if not, much appreciated all that you and your colleagues and do to keep us safe. And
Thank you, Mark.
don't go out and drink at 3 a.m. is the message, I think.
Yeah, that's I would stay away from that for now.
Yeah, great. All right. Keelan Caldwell is going to talk to us about the activity in the Greenway, please.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me back. I usually come in the spring. I came this spring, and of course, many things have changed since April or May when I was here. So I just wanted to give a couple of quick updates. I did send Suzanne a PDF document sort of at all the events happening in the Wharf, a lot of fitness classes, a couple of festivals. So she can definitely distribute that to members. I wanted to note a couple things. We did start a free volunteer-led tour program just last week. So if you have guests that are visiting or staying at your hotels or anything like that, that will be every Thursday from 5 to 6 and Friday from 12 to 1 through mid-September. So they'll be covering art, history, horticulture, meeting at Chin Park and kind of working their way north, ending around the Wharf District. So just wanted to note that. We are working again with Highland Street Foundation for a free day at the Carousel, which is always a really fun, busy day. So that's going to be on August 10th this year. So just mark that on your calendars. We had several members of the Wharf District Council at the groundbreaking of North Meadow on the Greenway, which is the new parcel finally coming to light, new park coming online all the way on the northern side of the Greenway. If anyone has any questions about that, we'd be happy to come back and talk more about what that will look like, or Rachel is here and can answer any questions in the chat. And then on public art, I'll just give the brief update that the Daniel Gordon exhibit, so the mural and the photo stanchions, there's one more piece to that exhibit that will be in the Wharf District. So these are large banners that are going to be hung sort of between the light blades. I know Lucas and Suzanne were in touch about that before Lucas sadly left us finally after giving a year's notice. But just wanted to give the update that those are being printed now and hopefully will be installed mid to late August. So one more piece of public art coming this year. And then I had two sort of specific things I wanted to just run by everybody. We're always very aware and respectful of sound requests in this area. We know there's a lot of residences, a lot of hotels. So we're always quite clear with our partners about low volumes. Make sure Suzanne always has my cell in case any concerns come up during an event, but wanted to raise two specific ones. Trillium Beer Garden, as you know, does not have music, but they are planning an Oktoberfest celebration across all their locations. This would be September 18th and 19th, so a Saturday and Sunday. I did do some research. Suzanne asked me why Oktoberfest happens in September. And apparently it's always Oktoberfest, the day is like the first weekend in October. So because it's become so popular, everyone has like moved it forward into September, and then it concludes in October. But that's sort of the reasoning behind the September dates. This would just be pre-recorded Oktoberfest German music, not very loud, from 12 to 6 each day. And then they'll have some decorations. So it's a pretty low key event, but just wanted to bring that around. And then also Boston Greenfest is returning. So they came from City Hall to the Greenway and surrounding areas in 2019. They're just going to be on the Greenway this year. It'll be a little bit smaller. So they're bringing their stage that was at Christopher Columbus Park in 2019 to the Greenway. And they are planning to have music performances from 12 to 6 on the 3 days of their festival, which is Friday, August 20th, and then that weekend, the 21st and 22nd. So that's kind of my quick update, my couple of events with sound this year. Boston Local Food Festival will be back. Caribbean Festival will be back in October. So they moved a bit later to add some time with COVID planning. But I'm excited. There's a lot of new things coming. Oh, and the one other thing I wanted to mention is that the Greenway Business Improvement District did give additional resources, additional funding for programs this year, which is the first time we've ever had something like that. So I am in the process of working on a series of performances and smaller events, all sort of aimed at getting people to be excited about coming back downtown for work, for tourism, and supporting some of the arts and culture organizations. So I don't have all that information yet, but I'll make sure to share that back with Suzanne as well to share with the group.
Great. And Keelan, I know that you sent this information to Suzanne. I would say to you and to everybody else on the call here, anything that you would like to have included in our upcoming sort of summer newsletter, please send those to Suzanne or to me or to Kelly, who's putting this together. We want to make sure that we get as much and as relevant a collection of information about what's going on in the district to be able to share with everyone. Suzanne, any other thoughts about what it is that we would like to have for
the newsletter? We're trying to get it out by the end of next week, if that's possible, at least to the to our designer. But we're looking, as always, for community kinds of events or information or anything that you want to share with the Wharf District neighborhood or the Wharf District community. So you can reach out, as Mark said, to me or to Kelly, and let us know what ideas you have, and we'll kind of chase them for you, or what you'd like to see, or if you actually have something. Like, I know we always reach out to the aquarium and all the hotels and the Greenway for information, but if and restaurants, we're trying to promote our restaurants in the area as well. So,
and
Matthew, I don't want to forget Boston Harbor City Cruises.
Right. And Doug Gribble is going to give us an update on what's been happening in the real estate market in the area. So you should all be keenly interested in that, even if it's just a sort of an academic question, if you're not planning on buying or selling. Rick, you had something you wanted to mention? Please do.
Yeah, sure. And actually, Mark, just wanted to quickly also introduce my colleague, Gabriela Coletta, who joined the aquarium last week as our external relations manager, working on some of the work that we're doing on the downtown waterfront. Some of you are probably looking at Gabriela and noticing a very familiar face. She was most recently the chief of staff to Boston City Councilor Lydia Edwards. So excited to have Gabriela on the team. So you'll either see her or me here quite frequently. I just wanted to mention a program that we're hosting in person for the first time in the Simons Theater countdown to 2030, leveraging art and creativity for the ocean decade, our effort to preserve 30% of the planet by 2030. It's the first in-person Lowell lecture series that we are having at the Simons Theater. I'll take that, Mark. I'll take that. I'm so excited, and a great panel discussion. And then ties in quite nicely with the work that's being done. You may have noticed that our Simons Theater is getting a little bit of a facelift. And we're super, super excited to have a very well-known artist, Shepherd Ferry, painting a mural on the northeast panel of our Simons Theater. Some of us have seen the image, so I'm super excited. I'm gonna make you all wait for it. But I can tell you, you're gonna be super impressed, and it's a nice addition to our Central Wharf campus. So if you're interested in attending Thursday night's panel conversation, both Gabriela and I will put our contact information in the chat, and reach out to us and we can get you the contact information to sign up for Thursday's lecture. So thanks for that, Mark.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Keelan. Wonderful work that you do with all of you do at the Greenway.
Thanks.
I don't know, is Ashley on?
She is.
Or she did. Ashley,
And
would you?
Zach.
Yeah, and Zach, do you guys want to give us an update on on what's going on with State Street? You know, we're interested.
Absolutely. Hi, yeah, both me and Ashley are here. I believe Para Jaisinghe is also here from the Public Works Department. I do have a brief presentation that I can share with you guys.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and share my screen now. And just so you know, Ashley has recently taken another position, a promotion position with the Public Works Department and Public Improvement Commission. Congratulations, Ashley. So she actually won't be leading this, managing this project anymore. So I will be taking over, at least in the interim, until we find someone else taking over that role. So Ashley, I didn't know if you wanted to say a few words.
No,
but-
yeah. I mean, as long as I've got you and Paro on here, I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to work with you and, you know, and for all the efforts we put into State Street. And thanks to the Wharf District Council for, you know, offering feedback and being a part of the process.
Best of luck to you, Ashley.
Yes, thank you,
We'll
Ash.
look forward to seeing you in your new role, I'm sure.
Yeah, she didn't go too far, just down the hall. So yeah, so we were able to get her to come along to this meeting anyway. So so yeah, I just have a couple slides and thank you guys for inviting us tonight, and we're happy to be here and happy to continue this the dialogue and provide you guys updates on this project and just keep the discussion going. So just to briefly update where we are, we're still in the data collection phase. As we discussed last time, we're just taking a look and seeing how things are going. Traffic wise and everything, you know, the pilots out there, we're just continuing to monitor the situation, not making any final design decisions or anything like that, just very much in this data collection phase, and also, you know, continuing to hear from you all. We are summarizing some of our data collection. We're planning to put that, I know some of you attended the Central Street meeting that we had the other day, and I'll talk about that briefly for a second, but I have some sort of a sneak preview for you guys tonight of some of the data that we'll be definitely posting on our website soon, but I'll run through some of the data that we've been collecting over the past several months on the street. We don't have all of it, it's not complete yet, but we'll be posting all of that on the website, but I'll share some of that with you all in a moment. Central Street directional change. We had talked about that again with the concerns about traffic congestion in the general vicinity and State Street. We had, you know, working that had been raised by the community. We had offered to explore some other options. So we proposed a potential Central Street directional change. There were many concerns with that raised at the meeting. So that's no longer being proposed at this point in time. We put a pin in that one. So just wanted to clarify that there's no proposed changes for Central Street. And then and then, of course, yeah, again, it's a dialogue. We want to work with the community to figure out, you know, solutions that work out here. And then lastly, you know, also from some of the concerns that have been expressed regarding the pilot and things that we've observed, we wanted to, and we told you that we come to you with some potential short-term improvements that we can make to the pilot. And just wanted to share some of those with you, similar to Central Street thing. If you like them, we can move forward with them. If you don't like them, you know, we can not do them. So just want to open that up for discussion. We'll show you a couple things that we can potentially take a look at. So jumping into the data collection, just a summary of what we are monitoring. Again, we're monitoring this through the end of the year. We've been monitoring it through the summer, and we'll see what things happen in the fall and everything. But monitoring traffic volumes for all modes of transportation, pedestrians, vehicles, bicycles. We're monitoring vehicle speeds and travel times. We're monitoring the queuing at both Congress Street and Surface Road to see how long vehicle queues are, especially during peak periods. We're monitoring curbside utilization, what's happening out there, vehicles, how long they spend at the curb, what they're doing, that type of thing. And we're also monitoring crash data and safety. So we get that information from EMS and both the police department. Collection to date, you can see all the months that we've been collecting data, and moving forward, the months that we have planned to collect data. So we have some pre-COVID numbers that we were working when we initially took a look at this project, as well as some data that we've been taking in COVID and also during this time of recovery. So I'll just jump in, and this is just, dumping some data on you, just showing you what we've collected. And again, our intention, I was hoping to have it on the website by now, but some folks have been on vacation and everything, but we will be publishing that, and I'll definitely send an email out. We can send an email out to this group to let you guys know when the full data is there, but we definitely wanted to give you a sneak preview just to show you where we are. So, here's just a bar graph of how traffic volumes have been specific to State Street. And, this probably, it's pretty much what you might expect. Obviously, in June of 2018, volumes were a lot higher. And then, the pandemic hit, and volumes were a lot lower. As our most recent count in June shows, we're about 38% less than we were initially when we first started monitoring traffic for this project. Here's just a look, and that's the daily traffic. Here's a look of what it looks like during the day, and this is just comparing June of 2018 to June of 2021. And of course, the dark blue represents the 2018 volumes, and the lighter blue represents the 2021 volumes. So you see, obviously, it's lower, but the pattern, over the course of the day and the peak times when people are using State Street is similar, but obviously less volume for obvious reasons. Pedestrian volumes, our initial count back in July of 2019 was almost 29,000. And our most recent count is down almost 60%, so closer to 12,000 pedestrians. And then just looking at that over the period where we've been collecting data on this, obviously the volumes have been significantly down, last summer, last winter, but are starting to pick up again, as I'm sure you've noticed, as more people are returning to work, and there's more folks down. Certainly when I've been walking around downtown, I've definitely noticed more pedestrians, but obviously not at the volumes that we were back in July of 2019. Bicycle volumes is kind of interesting. Back when we collected data, pre-pandemic in July of 2019, we were about at 353 bicycles. Our most recent count in June was actually up a little bit at 400. So that's up about 13% along State Street. And here's just a larger look at those volumes. Of course, they kind of remain fairly, consistent between July 2019 and August 2020. And then obviously we saw a dip in December, but that's obviously typical because we obviously get less ridership in the winter months. But right now we're seeing, volumes a little bit higher than we did back in 2019. Oops, sorry about that. And crash data, as you can see, this is a work in progress, but the crashes that we've been monitoring, and we're working with the police department to get the data. Sometimes it takes a little while because they got to send us data that's redacted and everything too. But hoping to close that out soon so we can get this on the website. But you can see here 2018 20 crashes and 2019 17 crashes. The crash rate, as we've noted before, along this corridor, per million entering vehicles, which is how we normalize crash data, is still significantly higher than the statewide average. So obviously well, in the 2018 to 2019 period, I should say. So we definitely want to monitor to see, you know, how crashes are doing. 2020 will be some very valuable information to see how things have been performing, of course, with lower volumes of traffic, but also since the pilot's been implemented. So we're very interested to see how that data is coming. And then, you know, before we jump into short-term adjustments, there's some other data that I mentioned that we haven't fully compiled. We've been doing some travel time analysis as well to analyze, especially during the peak periods, to figure out how much delay there is. You know, so we'll run the street with actual drive the street and figure that out. And we'll post that information as well so that we can see how the travel times are at different times during the day, during the pilot and as traffic volumes are adjusting. So I'm going to jump now into some proposed short-term adjustments. And again, this is very much a discussion point. Again, this is based on concerns and things that we've observed and concerns that we've heard from you all, and just some responses of some things that we can potentially do and we're thinking about doing to address that, and also some stuff that when we initially did the pilot, some pavement markings that didn't get in that we wanted to touch up and everything while we were out here. So I'll just jump through. Basically, I'm going to go from Congress Street down to Surface Road and just show you like by section, like what it looks like today and what we could potentially do on those sections. So taking a first look, this is the Congress Street section heading down to Kilby. This is what it looks like today. You have your three lanes approaching the intersection and your separated bicycle lane over here. And what we have potentially proposed is, again, this was something that we intended to do in the beginning, is to highlight some of this additional space that we were taking where we might be able to have some additional pedestrian space. So we had proposed that potentially paint this space tan. And then we were just going to add in some bicycle markings over here at the bike box to emphasize this as some bicycle space. So that's basically, you know, some minor adjustments that we were thinking about proposing for this particular block. And then this next block is probably where we want to propose the most significant changes. You know, concerns about the loading on State Street and those operations. Right now, we only have, you know, depending on the type of vehicle, but approximately 3 spaces here, obviously less if you have larger vehicles that are permitted for loading. And then the access to Butler Row is a little bit challenging because of the visibility here. And, you know, maybe sometimes it's blocked by people who don't really realize it's there. So we wanted to address that concern, as well as, you know, turning vehicles coming out of the left turn on a Broad Street was another concern that we had, and obviously processing traffic through this area. So one thing that I know we had talked about before, it was potentially swapping the loading area from the north side of State Street to the south side of State Street. And this opens up the opportunity for a larger permitted loading space over here. We can better emphasize the Butler Row egress here, and then improve this left turn coming out of Broad Street on the State, and it allows the opportunity again for much more space for permitted loading in this area. So that's basically the major aspect that we want to look at, and then there's some more additional tan paint in some of these areas that we were looking at as well. And then for this section, again, this is the section, obviously Chatham Row, here's Servier, where they have the nice outdoor dining over here now. You have the one travel lane, the bicycle. This is the quote unquote pinch point here, the most narrow section of the traveled way on State Street. Again, in this section, we weren't really proposing, this was just kind of some additional work, you know, proposing to add some of the tan paint. There was some recent National Grid work over here that disturbed a piece of the crosswalk, and I know there's been some flex posts that have been damaged or missing that should be replaced, and then some additional tan paint over here. And then lastly, this last section, as we approach Surface Road, again, I'm sure you're all familiar, the bicycle lane here, and then, you know, parking on this side of the street in front of the Harborside Hotel. And all we were essentially proposing here was to add in the tan paint to show the sidewalk extension. So with that, I'll open it up to any feedback. We'd love to get your feedback about your thoughts about any of these potential pilot changes. Again, if you like them, we're happy to get them implemented. If you have questions or concerns or that type of thing, we're happy to not do them. And then also, if you just have any general questions about the State Street project, we're happy to take them. Again, Ashley is you know, being transitioned out of the project management role, so I have my contact information there. I'll put the I can put the website in the chat as well. Yeah, obviously, if you contact Ashley, she can contact me as well. But just want to make sure we keep the lines of communication open. And with that, I'll open it up to any discussion, questions, comments, concerns.
The first thing I would say, thank you, Zach. Will you make this this presentation available to us so that we can study it in more detail? That would be great.
Absolutely. I'll send it to you. And again, like
Thank
most
you.
of this content with the data, like, you know, you saw that we didn't have the full crash data, and there's other things that we want to put in there. So
Yeah.
we'll put the full information on the website. But yeah, I can absolutely share this, of course.
Okay, so we'll have our State Street committee take a look at it and get back to you with some feedback. Also, Tom Nally, are you still on the line?
Still here.
Good. Tom, we had talked about trying to get some kind of traffic data from Zach along the way. Can you help us understand more specifically what information from the studies you would find most useful, so that when you help us to take a look at what it all means, we have a better idea? Yeah, you're better able to assist us with that.
Yeah, I think the data that we've seen today that's brought up to date will be very helpful in terms of for safety, in terms of things like travel speed, and for efficiency of moving through the area, things like queue length. And it's interesting to compare the volumes of what we see today to what we've seen pre-pandemic, and see if there's any relationship we can make about what will happen in the future. It's hard to do. You know, there's so many variables and so many things that are going to change. So this tells us a snapshot of what it's like at these various time periods. But you know, I don't see an easy way to foresee what will happen as more people return to the city, both taking transit, taking bicycles, and driving. They're all going to be moving in different directions.
Right. Well, just make sure that Zach is clear on what it is that we're looking for. And Zach, you know, I don't know if it's the raw data that Tom would find most useful, or specifically what he outlined, but Tom is our eyes and ears to helping us understand this stuff. So we appreciate your
absolutely
providing that.
Yeah, we're very, you know, we want to provide everything. All of this is meant to be made public. This is a project where we're studying this too, and we're also all very interested, not just for State Street, but for any project, how transportation is going to function coming out of this pandemic. So this is you know, this is a great study, and we're happy to be to share all this information with you.
Great. Matthew, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Zach, for the presentation and for offering some adjustments. I'm interested in terms of the data collection. One of my questions is, how long is that data collection period? Is it through December 2021? That was one question. And then the other, in terms of the past data from 2018, 2019, is it, I think one of the things that makes this year, there's so many variables that make it such an anomaly, but one is that the total absence of tour buses, motor coaches, school buses, which is normally in regular years pre-COVID. We have tons of groups that visit, tourist groups, tour buses, school buses full of summer camps and schools and so forth. And that's something that is conspicuously missing from this year. And I wonder if there's a way that in the data you've been able to call out of that, you know, a certain percentage of the of buses, you know, tour buses and school buses and so forth amongst the 2018, 2019 data.
We haven't specifically looked into the, sorry, I just put this slide up to answer the first part of your question. This is our data collected to date and anticipated schedule through December. So we'll do some more counts in August, September, October, and December.
December 2021 is the end of the data collection period.
For the time being, yes. That's what we have scheduled thus far. Yeah, so I think, you know, to your point, you know, it'll be very interesting September, assuming that things are continuing to go like they're going, and with school buses and all of that and everything, to see how things, and you know, more people coming back to work. Then I think that will be very interesting, and we're very interested to see how that data brings. Have we specifically called out tour buses and things of that nature in our counts? No. But we do these things with video counts. So I mean, that's certainly something that we can look into. It's also, we can also reach out to these the tour bus companies and everything to get a sense of how things are going with them.
Just from our point of, from our point of view at Boston Harbor City Cruises, and you know, the number of groups that we have, the amount of group tour business we have, and buses, tour buses that park along Haymarket in that bus parking area and make their way to State Street. You know, it is a very significant amount of volume that needs to be considered in the full picture. So.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And very happy to work with you and others to talk about that. Absolutely.
Other questions?
I have one regarding the collection of the data. If you go to one of the charts, like bicycles in June, right here, how do you know that there were 353 bicycles and 400? How is there a little person with a chart that sits there and counts, or how do we do this?
You take a video of it, and then we physically count from that video.
So somebody actually counts.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is an actual count. Yes.
And is that a 24-hour day count, or is it between certain hours?
We typically do like 11-hour counts during the peak of the day.
So in June, there were 353 bicycles, 2019, 353 bicycles and 10,000 vehicles. Is that right?
Yes. Sorry, sorry. No. Let's just make sure we got apples to apples here. That was July of 2019. We had the 353 bicycles. We actually didn't have, that was June of 18 was that count. Yeah.
Still, it's about
but anyway,
that.
Anyway, yeah, sure. We can assume it was probably similar vehicular count. Yeah,
3% of the volume or something like that.
So does a computer come up with these figures? Nobody actually counts 10,000 vehicles, right?
I mean, we follow standard practices for traffic counts that are, you know, nationally accepted, you know, so it's a physical count.
It is a physical count.
Yes, it's not estimated by, you know, there's different ways to do it. There's tube counts, there's video counts, there's all these different ways to do it. We did some counts with video for this particular project.
Thank you.
I'll jump in. I will say I doubt that somebody was out there with a clipboard, but in the past they have done it, and it is like, you know, 2 people doing, you know, 8-hour days with overlaps. Volume, you know, volume counts have been done that way.
Not the job I want.
It's fun if you want to volunteer, but yes, yeah.
Other questions for Zach? Zach, thank you. You can turn that over, if you will, and we appreciate your updating us. We look forward to continuing to get the information as it progresses, and we will, as I say, when we get this from you, we will have our subcommittee take a look at it and give you some feedback on the proposed changes.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. And I'll also make sure I'll put the link right now in the chat for the State Street website, even though I'm sure you probably have it. And we don't have the stuff updated now, but it will be up to date shortly.
Great. Sure. We are expecting candidate Councilor Andrea Campbell at 6:30. She couldn't come before that. But let's get John Romano to give us an update on the city, and then if I still have time, I will tell you about the task force, but those two things first. John, still on? John Romano, are you still on? Maybe not. Okay, well, if he comes back, we can hear from him. Okay, so while we're waiting for Andrea, the Climate Resilience Task Force, which you're, I think, all aware of, has put together what we're calling the stakeholder appeal. And this is a document that we put together to try to explain to everybody what the task force mission is. And I want to share that with you. And I thought I had, but I apparently didn't properly pull it up. Hang on a second. I'm sorry. Apologies. Okay, so there are a number of what we're doing at this point is asking the volunteers to go around and talk to all of the folks who have an invested interest in the resilience of the district to become involved. And a number of our members said it would be great to really explain what it is we're trying to do here. So this is going to go onto our website, but the basic idea is that it starts out with an explanation of why this matters to us. And this comes from the Climate Ready Boston map that explains why our area is such an important and potentially dangerous source of water coming into the city. The Wharf district is defined by this white line down here at the bottom. And so we've worked on the problem statement that really talks about the need to be able to prevent future flooding, and to come up with a concept that has materials, location, and configuration defined. There is currently a concept, a stated need for this, but there are no details in it. This is a public-private partnership that we're proposing so that the stakeholders, the property owners, and others involved will participate both in terms of intellectual capital and what their preferences are for their own properties, as well as taking advantage of the state funding that we talked about earlier. This is from Climate Ready Boston. I believe that this identifies the alternatives that have been proposed so far. You can see that they're very general, and so they really don't talk about how you would actually go about it, and none of the specifics of how, for example, Harper Towers wants to deal with their property have been taken into account. It's a general idea, and so we want to create this concept, district-wide concept plan that has everybody's input involved in it and protects the billions of dollars that would otherwise be damaged. The tasks that we have are to build on what's been already, to begin to collect information that already exists that each of the property owners has, or hopefully they have, and to be able to make it available to the engineers so that we don't have to pay for it a second time. And then to engage property owners in what their preferred design approach is, and others as well, utilities and MBTA and the folks who are involved in water transit and so forth, to make sure that all these parts and pieces connect. And then ultimately to identify the cost and the process for actually bringing this about. So the idea, this is a long-term plan, and it will not be the final plan, but we need to start this. And so the ambassadors are going to be reaching out to all the stakeholders to try to get them to be involved. This is a list for the ambassadors of the things that we're looking for from each of the property owners to try to see, does this information exist? Do they know what the license, Chapter 91 licenses are? We're going to add to this the question of what is the impact on their insurance for concerns about flooding, and basically to tell them to find out, who should be the point of contact for each of these properties. As I said, what the existing conditions are, and to try to get them to participate financially as well. One of the questions that people had asked is, why should they be a part of this? Why should they contribute either time or money if they're already working on their own properties? And the answer is principally, it's all well and fine to protect your own property, but if we do not make a continuous connection across the whole district, the water will come in between the properties and flood the infrastructure, and it won't help us at all. This has to be about creating a cohesive solution that extends all the way across the district. And by the way, the North End is going to have to do the same thing, and Fort Point and so forth. So this is just us trying to do our job, our work on our district, hoping everybody else will do theirs on to where they're involved. So we're asking all of the Wharf District Council members to be involved, and we're asking others who are interested, both in terms of, as I said, the folks who don't necessarily own property on the waterfront, but who are involved in it, and also the folks on the other side, the Greenway, and the folks on the side of the Greenway, because they will be flooded too if we don't do this. And so this is not just a question of, telling the aquarium or the BPDA or Rose Wharf or somebody to do it all by themselves. This is something that we have to do as a group to protect the entire district. It's amazing how far that those maps suggest that the water will be coming in if we don't do what we're supposed to. So that's the big picture. And I know that there are a number of ambassadors on the call tonight. Does anybody else have, let's see, there's a, and Andrea has just joined. Thank you very much for that. So that's, I'm going to ask Andrea, Councilor Campbell, to share with us her thoughts about her candidacy and the future of Boston, and perhaps tell us, if you will, a little bit about the your perspective on some of the questions that or issues that we've talked about as being of greatest concern to us.
Hi, Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for being here.
Having some technical challenges. Crazy. But anyway, so thank you for having me, and it's great to be here with each and every one of you. And thank you for your leadership. I came in just a minute ago and caught the tail end of your presentation, obviously on a critical issue, not just, of course, for your neck of the woods, but other parts of the city where, frankly, the city needs to take the lead on that coordination and action piece. So I appreciate the presentation. I will tell folks just a little bit about me, why I'm running in this moment in time, and hopefully actually can answer your questions on some pressing issues, being mindful of your full agenda. I currently represent District 4 on the council, so I'm not regularly in your neck of the woods because I represent Dorchester, Mattapan, where I live with my husband and 2 boys, a little bit of Jamaica Plain and Rosendale, and I've been on the council for the last 6 years. But I know your neighborhood well. I was born and raised in the city of Boston. I actually grew up in Roxbury in the South End. I'm a product of Boston Public Schools. I went to 5 of them, including Latin school. All 5 were excellent. I left Latin school and went to Princeton University and then UCLA for law school. Then I came home to Roxbury and started my legal career representing families and students in education cases. I also have done work in state government as an attorney for Governor Deval Patrick. But I also talk about the fact that Boston is also where I've experienced tremendous pain and loss. And 9 years ago, my twin brother passed away while in the custody of a state prison. He had a disease called scleroderma, and as a result of receiving inadequate health care, would pass away at the age of 29 while in their custody. As you can imagine, that transformed and changed my life forever. And rather than stay in a place of anger or resentment, I essentially turned that pain into purpose. And when I first ran for the council, I asked one question that is the same question that is driving this run for mayor, which is how do 2 twins born and raised in the city of Boston have such different life outcomes? We are, of course, a world-class city by so many standards and so many metrics, where I was just on a Zoom last night talking about we're inventing vaccines. We have emerging industries here in the city of Boston. We're historic by so many metrics. We have some of the best medical institutions and higher ed institutions in the world, and other metrics as well. But I also stress the fact that yes, we are a world-class international city. We still have significant inequities that we have to grapple with. And when I jumped into this mayor's race in September, I said, I didn't want to stand on the sidelines in this moment in time when we're talking about systemic inequities in ways we haven't in a really long time. I said, this is our opportunity in the city of Boston to grapple with those inequities, and that I can't accept the fact that, for example, I live in Mattapan with my 2 boys. They have a 5% chance of getting into a high quality Boston public school compared to some other neighborhoods where it's 80%. I can't accept the fact that certain communities in the city of Boston don't have access to good transit, don't have access to good parks, don't feel as though the waterfront or the Wharf is a part of their community, still feel as though we're very segregated as a city. There are many residents who don't have access to economic opportunity. And if you ever just took a drive down Blue Hill Ave or Washington Street in Codman Square, we lack economic robust business districts, and the list is long. But the best thing about the city of Boston is that if we come together as a larger community, we have everything it would take to close all of those gaps, because we have the resources, the human capital, the talent, the civic leadership, the nonprofit community, the philanthropic community, and so much more in our ecosystem to grapple with all of that. And when we do that, Boston then becomes the #1 city in the country that has actually figured out how to do this. And so my leadership has always been grounded in closing these gaps, but most importantly, doing it in such a way that it brings people together across every demographic, every neighborhood, to work in partnership to get things done, and most importantly, to get things done. I don't like wasting time. We've been talking about resiliency. There are some neighborhoods, obviously, that don't even have access to resilient infrastructure, but I don't like wasting time. I'm not an expert on every issue, but I'm always honest, and I always lead with integrity and intentionality, in a collaborative leadership style. So I hope to earn your support, but most importantly, of course, want to answer your questions. I know I don't have a lot of time. I have a lot of information on my website, and we'll make sure to leave that contact detail in the chat.
Great. Thank you, Counselor. We have a number of things that are of particular interest to us. I don't know if you have those issues before you and you'd like to just sort of talk to them, or if you'd like me to ask them of you. What's your preference?
Feel free to ask them of me, Mark.
Okay. All right. Well, let's everybody's tired of hearing me talk, but I'll give you a few clues. We are concerned about traffic, and particular about State Street as it's being proposed. Can you help us to understand how we might work through that?
So thank you. I did have some conversations early on about this and the traffic congestion that is of primary concern, of course, to folks in your community. I know the city is proposing some changes to State Street and looking at creating a bike lane, being more multimodal, obviously going from maybe 2 lanes to 1. So there's a lot of proposals on the table. I haven't been on the weeds because I'm obviously outside of the district. So I always take my cues from the residents. I will say everything I've done in my district has always been from the bottom up, not the top down. So any structural changes to our streets, for example, that I'm pushing right now have been designed in partnership with our residents, with our businesses and other stakeholders as well. And so I think when we were sort of going back and forth over email, I wanted to also hear from folks on the Zoom what they thought, what piece of that proposal, what they thought was not working well, and if engagement, of course, has been done well. For me, it's really pushing something needs to be done. It needs to be done with a sense of urgency. We need the city of Boston to also ensure investment as well.
Great.
And I'm in touch with your district counselor. I'll put it like that.
Excellent.
Even as a candidate for mayor, you have to be careful when you overstep your district line. I'm just going to be very frank with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's been a great supporter. We appreciate it.
All right, perfect. I think I'm going to take off.
You know that we're keen on addressing this issue of climate resilience. We just shared that with you. What do you see as the city's role in that?
A few things. One is the city has to take the lead, whether it's a meeting like this or some meetings with some of our cultural institutions or some of our philanthropic community that is also cares deeply, of course, about climate and resiliency and wants to make greater investments to respond to issues of climate. It's not coordinated. There are folks who are developing their own plans in many ways, also looking for resources to be able to do this. And I think when I was catching the tail end of your presentation, you summed it up well. It's important that it be coordinated, that everyone play a role. And I think the city is uniquely positioned to create the space for that coordination, to offer up more investment. We have a lot of great plans. I put that in my environmental plan. Over the years, we've developed some wonderful plans. We're missing our own timelines. So one is just accountability, our ability to coordinate, critically important. The city has to take the lead. Two other pieces. We've been talking about development quite a bit. We had a couple of forums and conversations over the last 2 weeks. And what does responsible development look like? In one of our conversations, the seaport came up, obviously projects related along the Wharf, along Atlantic Ave, and real concerns that when when developers are developing some of these proposals, they're not taking into consideration that certain parts of the city are flooding and will only get worse. And so what does it mean for the city to always be building with a climate and resiliency lens and really having the tough conversations to say, it's probably not a good idea to build here because it will be underwater soon, and really thinking about developing parks, green space, working with Boston Harbor now, organizations and many others to have a coordinated response and actually to build infrastructure that will actually have an impact on issues of flooding and create resiliency. And also to do it in an equitable way, because I often have to remind the city, it's not just the waterfront and the Wharf, of course, that is dealing with climate. Every part of the city is. So when I speak to that coordination intentionality, this is the last point I want to make. It really has to be across the entire city of Boston. I think this is the issue that could really bring our city together across neighborhood lines and demographics in ways we haven't actually in a long time. If we actually were brainstorming and coming together, the city of Boston can drive that and also envision a city that we're more connected and accessible, where folks in Mattapan, Hyde Park, and Dorchester feel like the Wharf, of course, in the waterfront are also their community, and vice versa. When you come to Mattapan, for example, and you come to our trail, Neponsit Trail, or the Neponsit Greenway, it's beautiful and stunning. The city could be driving some of these creative activities that connect residents across neighborhoods, and of course, are building infrastructure to respond to issues of climate and resiliency, and building resiliency in every neighborhood equitably. Sorry, that could be a whole Zoom. So
yeah, well,
short period of time.
Probably will be, yeah. You know, our area has a lot of visitors. It's a huge hospitality and tourist industry is a big part of who we are. It has been devastated by COVID. How can the city, can the city help to bring that industry back after this pandemic?
A whole host of ways. And frankly, I've been remarking as I engage with folks from the Convention Bureau and of course, residents and business owners, those in the restaurant industry, that we can't even wait for those investments until sort of the next elected mayor. We need to be making those investments now. And we're getting millions of dollars from the federal government where we don't often talk about tourism enough. For me, it's a couple things. One is immediate investment in our restaurant and hospitality industry. There is some projects going on right now, and the convention center is even driving some creative legislation with Councilor Edwards, creating almost like a bid that would drive some revenue from the state to tourism efforts, which I think is quite unique. So there's federal dollars, there's legislation on the table where we can get really creative in terms of more state revenue for these efforts. I think immediate relief to some of our small businesses is also critically important, particularly those in the restaurant industry. I've actually put out a plan early on after engaging a lot of restaurant owners and their workers who did not, frankly, feel as though the city and the state were viewing them as essential workers, and we know they are. And on the employment side, the restaurant and hospitality industry offer the lowest barriers in terms of employment opportunities for folks. And we're going to need to think about that as we help certain neighborhoods that are dealing with higher rates of unemployment get back to work. And so those federal dollars will play a critical role. I also think it goes back to my previous response to the other question, because all these issues are intersectional, right? As we're building up our response to climate and to create more resiliency in neighborhoods, it's also reminding folks we are an international coastal city. And I was on a Zoom where we talked about Baltimore. You Google Baltimore and that pops up. I'm like, Boston can't beat Baltimore. When you think about how beautiful our city is, the ecosystem, the history of our city. So in greater investments in tourism, of course, will lead to more folks coming, but we also, of course, want to make sure it's accessible to other folks who live in other parts of the city as well. And then lastly, because I brought up Baltimore, one thing they are doing right is investing in their cultural institutions, like the aquarium, the Children's Museum, all the institutions that we take for granted that have been struggling in COVID. We have not given them the resources that they need. And if we want them to bounce back quickly, particularly in certain parts of the city, we're going to have to invest in them. And other urban cities have been doing just that. And we've been behind the ball on that. We have to change that in the immediate.
Thank you. We have a question about housing. Obviously, ours is an expensive place to live, but we recognize that that there is a need for affordable housing in the city of Boston, regardless of how you define affordable. Can you tell us a little bit about how the city can help with that, address that issue?
A whole host of ways, and this could be a Zoom, but I really will stress, and I know folks look at there are a lot of plans. I'm really proud of my housing plan because it's quite specific. All of my plans, they're specific, they're practical, and they're doable. I engage a lot of folks when actually developing my housing plan and a whole host of stakeholders, because this conversation, as you know, can quickly become us versus them. And if we're going to create more affordable housing, everyone's going to have to play a role. So I'll say a few things. One is, I'm really proud of my record here. My first piece of legislation on the council was the Community Preservation Act, which, as we know, is generating nearly $20 million every single year for affordable housing, along with historic preservation and the expansion of access to green space and open space in the city. So that is going to continue to exist. I think one thing that we've been missing as a city is pushing the state. There's a matching component to that. So we can push the state to also match and increase the match for CPA. There's a lot of conversations right now on expansion of other funding sources, including IDP linkage. I think there are reasonable ways to do that without standing in the way, of course, of building housing. So the funding sources are key. I think we have to get creative in the city of Boston. I'm really proud that I established and started the Vacant Lot Initiative. City-owned vacant lots, hundreds, actually thousands of them. But there are hundreds right now that can be activated for affordable housing purposes. And I often tell the city of Boston, these lots are usually not maintained well. They create blight in community or public safety hazards. Activate them for community purpose, including housing. And if you don't have a plan, give them away. put them in the hands of residents who have a whole bunch of great ideas. And so right now, there are a lot of RFPs out there because of that initiative that I started. I would expand upon that. And if blessed to become the next elected mayor, I would activate 100 of those lots in my first 100 days and really cut the red tape. And then the last piece is process red tape. It's really expensive and time consuming to build affordable housing in the city of Boston. And if we want to be able to bring more affordable housing online quicker at pricing points that residents can afford, we're going to have to revamp ISD's processes, the BPDA. So in my proposal, I talk about removing affordable housing from the Article 80 process and also looking at revamping ISD's role in all of this, because I've heard from so many folks who want to build affordable housing. It's easier to do it in other municipalities in the Commonwealth or in New York City, which is absolutely ridiculous. And so that's another big piece in my plan. So I hope folks will take a look.
I certainly want to leave time for other people to ask questions, but there is a, is it your expectation that the Northern Avenue Bridge, if you are mayor, will continue to through the process?
That it will
get built?
I think so. We've been talking about it. Again, it goes back to action, action, action. There are a lot of things we've been talking about for a really long time. But again, I can't stress this enough, that everything that I do is always grounded in what the residents want to see in their particular communities. And I think the city of Boston sometimes has to get out of the way and just make it happen.
Suzanne, I know you had a question or two. Would you like to ask the counselor your questions?
I'm just looking around here. Sorry, I like to make it feel interactive. I don't know where you are, Suzanne.
Suzanne, there you go.
Oh,
Right now, I'm just looking at myself and you, Mark.
Okay, well, Suzanne is there. Go ahead.
Hi, Suzanne.
hello, Councilor Campbell. Thank you for joining us tonight. Mark has pretty much answered or asked a lot of my questions, and you've been answering them. You talk or you stress about neighborhoods and getting the neighborhoods involved in decision making, which as we really like here. And one of our areas, as you know, is this neighborhood, the Wharf District, is such a historic neighborhood, and it has so much to offer people and the tourism, and we thrive on that here and we encourage it. And what the other thing that we are concerned about is that if you go in beyond the water, beyond the Greenway, you will see in the financial district historic streets and buildings that I think are being overlooked. And I guess, would you help us to preserve and protect this historic area in addition to supporting the tourism that this area brings?
The short answer is yes, Suzanne. And that was one of the selling pieces for the Community Preservation Act, is the fact that we are a historic city and an historic coastal city, right? That has such a rich and robust history that we don't offer enough investment to preserve sites, streets, or even just architectural details. I have Dorchester, that's my biggest neighborhood. There are residents mobilizing and civic leaders every day to protect doorknobs. And people are like, why are you doing that? Because they've been there since like the 18th century or something. It really is remarkable. But just how challenging it is to do that. Our Landmarks Commission, of course, which plays a critical role, is disconnected from the development conversations, is under-resourced, understaffed, and has been for years. So it really is about prioritization. And it should always be at the top of the list when you think about the city of Boston is a draw because of the history that lives here. And so I think greater investment is key. I think greater collaboration across neighborhoods. I'm really actually proud that in my district, and this is a narrative that doesn't get told because I think Dorchester and Mattapan often get the deficit lens in the media space, but we have between 45 and 50 civic organizations in my district. And I've convened and hosted civic empowerment series where residents come together to share best practices, to say, you're trying to save doorknobs in Ashmont Hill. Well, I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm in this part of Mattapan or Jamaica Plain or Rosendale, other parts of my district. The city of Boston should lead that work. I've hosted civic summits bringing nearly 450 leaders across every neighborhood, including some on this Zoom, to some of the civic leader workshops I've hosted. That would be the foundation of my work, to make sure that we're working not only on historic preservation issues, but other issues that are shared across every neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How about some other questions for the counselor? Joanne? Go ahead, Joanne.
Oh, yes. Thank
Hi,
you very
Joanne.
much, Councilor Campbell, for joining us this evening. I'm the president of the Friends of Christopher Columbus Park, and I'm sure you're familiar with the park. And one of our missions is to activate the park by having events, and the primary events we do are for children. And over the years, you know, it concerns me when I hear you say that people in other neighborhoods feel like they're not comfortable or not welcome in this neighborhood. Just before COVID, the fall festival before that, we were delighted because I think it was bostoncentral.com or one of those sites. We wound up with people from all over, and it was amazing and just perfect. But it's different now. You know, we're been restricting, we're not doing such big events. But what can we do to make people feel more welcome? Or what can the city do to say, you know, this is your waterfront, the seaport is your area, the North End is your area. I think one of the challenges, you don't know how the heck to get around. They can stand on the corner of Atlantic Avenue and try and figure out where the heck the water is. The signage is horrible. But I don't know if you have any guidance for me to help how we can expand this for more neighbors around the city. Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate the point on the signage and everything else. Yes, fix that so people know where they're going. A few things. I actually think the residents and civic leaders in particular, and those at various cultural institutions, also a lot of artists, and we know that's a broad category, are actually doing this work on the grounds, maybe as unsung heroes in bringing folks together across different neighborhoods. I see it in my neighborhood. I also see greater outreach, frankly, in the last few years with young people and youth in terms of different activities for families in different neighborhoods. So that outreach is happening. The thing that I struggle with and that really I found frustrating is, what is the role city in supporting those efforts that are happening on the ground? And I think it sometimes is maybe greater investment. I think it's championing those events. I think it's making it easier for residents to host events like that. And I'll give you one example. I like jazz music. I like all kinds of music, but jazz and blues music. And I said, I don't want to always go downtown for a jazz festival. I live in Mattapan. I want one in Mattapan. And I remember talking to a whole host of folks within the city, and it just took too long. Finally, I said, I'm going to host my own Mattapan Jazz and Unity Festival. And we did just that. I did it in partnership with residents. All of the artists and young people we featured came from the district, which was really a powerful statement that artists who travel the world as jazz musicians actually live right here in the city of Boston and live right here in Mattapan and Dorchester. All of the vendors in the restaurants, we charged them no fees. We had them come. Every single vendor did extremely well, and they were all local from the community. And then, of course, we broadcasted and we got it out as much as we could for folks from every neighborhood in the city of Boston, including some neighboring municipalities, to come and enjoy themselves and to connect over music. It was so powerful, but it took so long to be able to do that. I'm in the system and I struggled to get the resources. I had to go through the application process, and you have to deal with, do you have police details and this? And I thought, the lay resident who is volunteering their time as a civic leader who wants to do this, well, good luck. So in many of my plans, I talk about the city can absolutely take the lead. The city of Boston, I also propose an office where civic engagement is happening in this organizing efforts, and where folks can get trained, but get resources and technical assistance to be able to create these events, where we then promote them, we then lift them up, and we champion them. And if we do that, it's not just for us across every neighborhood. It's also for folks who come to visit, to say, we're a robust city with incredible neighborhoods with rich history. And if you know Mattapan, it's a rich Jewish community, and it used to be in many ways. We could be lifting that up and also encouraging tourists to take a tour through every neighborhood through these events that we help facilitate in partnership with residents. So that's my vision of just making it easier for residents to do just that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. Counselor, I know that you have an upcoming meeting that you need to go to.
Moving
And
through the
so,
world.
right. Yeah, I know that this is a quick stop along your very busy schedule, but one last question from anybody, or if not, is there anything else that Counselor you'd like to share with us as a parting thought?
Well, two things. One, thank you all for your leadership and being here. I know it's a beautiful day, so you could be somewhere and having a good time. So thank you for taking the time. I value civic leadership. I hope to earn your support in this race. And if you have more questions, please do follow up. Nicole has put my information in the chat. You can also find it on our website, which is just andreacampbell.org. And I'll also just end with, I've put in a lot of work to develop really thoughtful and specific policies, including engaging some very folks on this Zoom. So do take a look, more policies to come. Do take a look, and if we can answer more questions, and I can, don't hesitate to follow up. Stay safe, healthy, hydrated, and cool. And thank you all so very much for having me.
Great. Best of luck to you, Counselor.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Counselor.
Bye.
Everybody, don't forget to vote when we will look forward to our next meeting on August 17th, right, Suzanne?
Yes.
And which will be an in-person meeting.
It will be an in-person meeting at the Boston Harbor Hotel Atlantic Room. And we are still finalizing our guest speakers. But we hope to have some names in the next 2 weeks. I can't say any more than that. Although I think I've actually told everybody.
Yeah, she's not good at keeping a secret.
No.
Everybody go have some dinner or a drink.
Well, John Romano did join us.
Yes, John, I texted John. I think we're good for the moment, right? Or anything critical?
Just want to say hello, everyone. Again, John Romano, your neighborhood services liaison for the neighborhood. If you have any questions, comments, and concerns, feel free to reach out to me. It's john.romano@boston.gov, or as Suzanne, Mark, everyone knows how to get in touch with me. Please feel free to reach out at any time.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.